Dresden was referred to as the Florence of the North. There were many monuments in it, which constituted a national cultural heritage. It was a place of residence for up to 400,000 refugees forcibly displaced from Eastern Europe or fleeing from the Red Army. Dresden was considered a city devoid of strategic potential. It did not have any anti-craft defense. It could not defend itself. On February 13 to 15, British RAF and USAF carried out carpet raids on the capital of Saxony. There were 4 bombings in which there were used high explosive bombs and incendiary devices. The bombs were equipped with a delayed ignition that made it difficult to extinguish and compounded losses. In addition, the city did not have a well-organized fire brigade. Loads thrown on the city lit it up like daylight. The number of victims exceeds several times the number of victims of the bombings of Wieluń, Coventry and Rotterdam. For comparison, 100 tons of bombs were dropped on Rotterdam without killing more than 1,000 inhabitants. In turn, 3,900 tons of bombs were dropped on Dresden, killing 25,000 people. The airmen did not have a detailed city plan, and they did not focus on any specific goals. They were looking for a big built-up area which they could burn. Strategic facilities such as the railway bridge over the river bank have been intact. The transport was operating. The military industry that the city had at its disposal was evacuated outside the city. The airmen bombed refugee camps. There are witnesses who claim that the British Air Force has been fired at civilians from a machine gun.
We could see it from probably 150 miles away going in, see the glow in the sky, but we got all the targets. There was no flak whatsoever.
At least 100 miles away from Dresden, you could see this terrific burning going up. So we didn't need to navigate. I mean, Lefty would have been navigating us right onto the target, were we the first or second aircraft to arrive. But we just flew straight onto the target.
An RAF memo issued to airmen on the night of the attack said, "Dresden, the 7th largest city in Germany, and not much smaller than Manchester, is also the largest unbombed build-up area the enemy has got. In the midst of winter, with refugees pouring westward and troops to be rested, roofs are at a premium. Not only to give shelters to workers, refugees and troops alike, but to house the administrative services displaced from other areas. At one time well known for its China, Dresden has developed into an industrial city of first-class importance. The intentions of the attack are to hit the enemy where he feels it most, behind an already partially collapsed front, and incidentally to show the Russians when they arrive what Bomber Command can do." The advocate and propagator of the bombing raids was Arthur Harris, called by his friends Bomber. The post-war report estimates that 1/3 of the German population suffered direct damage from bombardments. About 14 million people lost their property, more than 20 million were deprived of electricity, gas or water for some time, and 5 million had to be evacuated. 1/4 of the apartments were destroyed. About 600,000 people died.
There are a lot of people who say that bombing can never win a war. Well, my answer to that is that it has never been tried yet, and we shall see.
In the United Kingdom, there was growing concern about reports of a huge number of victims of bombings. The leaders, including Churchill, began to think seriously about their RAF's warfare. It seems to me that the moment has come when the question of bombing of German cities simply for the sake of increasing the terror, though under other pretexts, should be reviewed. Otherwise, we should come into control of an utterly ruined land. The destruction of Dresden remains a serious query against the conduct of Allied bombing. I am of the opinion that military objectives must henceforward be more strictly studied in our own interest than that of the enemy. There was a great concern in the British government about the size of the victims of civilian raids on German cities. Nevertheless, Harris was promoted to the Marshal of the Royal Air Force after the laborious election. Harris was omitted in the Attlee government letter on war merits. In the face of protests against mass victims of carpet bombs, he was refused a special medal to commemorate the bombing campaign. In 1946 he retired.
If you had the time over again, would you do anything differently?
If I had the same time over again, I would do the same thing. But I would always hope not to have the same time.
To this day, Dresden is a special city because of its history and architecture. Every year crowds of people pass through the city, commemorating not only the victims, but also the bestial attack on the unarmed, non-strategic city. Must remember that on the pages of history, the winners write themselves as uncritically good, but after years even the Allies reach the truth and admit to too much damage in the favor of the victory. Both moderately right and Nazi parties take part in the anniversaries. German far-right refer to the bombing as a mass murder, calling it Dresden's Holocaust of bombs. The mayor of the city also takes part at an anniversary of bombing. He comes to the Anne cemetery where there are 592 unknown deaths here. All died during one day. Leftist activists call the events of 13th February a myth and glorify Arthur Harris. The Nazi Holocaust was among the most evil genocides in history, but the Allies' firebombing of Dresden and nuclear destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were also war crimes, and also acts of genocide.